recording.
All right. Hey kids, it's Grandma here in my period dress that I usually teach kids in. I wanted to tell you a little bit about some Revolutionary War women. There are several different ones, but today I'm going to start with Molly Pitcher. Now Molly Pitcher is kind of a conglomeration of women. It's not one person. And in history, it names different women, but it's just a group of women that helped out during the war. You may not know this, but there were women that fought in the Revolutionary War 250 years ago. And there were women that were married to men that did and followed along. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So you see I'm dressed in a dress that they wore 200 years ago. They were very modest. They didn't let skin show. You know, that was not something that happened. So they only had one dress typically, and so they wore this apron. And they would wash this apron in the streams or the ponds at night and then let it dry and put it on again. They were pretty dirty. They wore a mob hat, M-O-B, mob hat, to keep their hair from getting too dirty because they couldn't wash it very often. And believe it or not, this was used as a sunbonnet too to keep their head from getting sunburned. So going back to Molly Pitcher now, the American Revolution was 250 years ago, and it was a pretty long war. It was a series of different battles. We're going to talk about the Battle of Monmouth. That's Monmouth, New Jersey, and it gets very hot there. This battle happened June 28, 1778. It was summertime, and it was 103 degrees out. Now the men wore wool uniforms, and Grandpa will dress up in his and you'll see, but very, very hot. It was very humid. And there was an artillery unit, a regiment of artillery, which is cannons, and they would be fired so heavily and so fast that they would be red hot, these cannons were. Now, going back with these men, like today, women don't follow their men to war. There's women in war now, but back then there were not, and there were men and boys. And so the mothers and the kids, all the siblings, would actually go with them. So here they're marching, the men are marching, and the women and children are all in the back. So just imagine your mom with your brother and your sister and you tagging along behind. And this went on for hundreds of miles. These were very poor people. These were some of the poorest. Some of them didn't even have shoes. Like I'm barefoot today just to show you. They were tattered and they were skinny and they didn't have much to eat or drink. But the favorite names back then were Martha, Margaret, and Mary. And many of the women, a lot of percentage of women were named that. So they helped out with fixing the uniforms and dressing the wounds and cooking the food at night and stuff. Now they couldn't hang out in the camp with the men. They had to set up a campsite, a little ways off, and the men would go over there and get fed and see their families after the battle of the day. So during that time, it was very hot, by the way. In order to get water, in order to cool the cannons down, the women would run with pitchers like this, but metal typically, or pots and pans, whatever they had. And the men would say, bring a pitcher of water. Well, that was a little bit long to say, so they'd say, Molly Pitcher, which meant whoever's the closest, bring some water. So the women would go to the local stream or the local pond, and they'd run back, and they would just douse that hot cannon with water to cool it down. And the men would get a drink of water, and they'd pour it over them. Well, this day, it was 103 degrees and very humid. And one of the women were there helping out her husband's cannon. And he passes out from heat stroke. A lot of them died from heat stroke this day, 37 at least that they know of. And the cannons are going, and she's there helping. Her husband's passed out from the heat. And all of a sudden, she knew what to do because she'd been following him from battle to battle. So she picked up this ramrod which is, here's a picture, let me show you what a ramrod is. It's the long mechanism there that forces the cannonball into the cannon, right? So she picks that up, because that's what her husband did. He's laying there passed out from heat stroke, picks it up, and she starts ramming the cannonball in there, and then pulls the ramrod back. And then someone lights it, and everybody holds their ears. Boom! There goes the cannon. And this went on, and all of a sudden, the British, which is the enemy we were fighting, by the way, an 8-inch cannonball comes sailing through the air, and guess where it goes? It goes, whoo, right between her legs, and it took off her petticoat and the bottom of her skirt. And all she said was, wow, that could have been worse. And she kept on going back and ramming that ramrod in there and kept on fighting. And what was unfortunate about was that battle, the Americans were captured and they became prisoners of war. But the battle was lost that day, but the war was won in the long run. And that's just one of the small stories I want to tell you. And this is my first one, so I'll keep it short and hope you enjoyed it. So love y'all. I'll see you later.